Okay, so welcome to episode one of I'm not sure what I'll call it, but I'll call it the Wizard Takes podcast for now. This is just going to be a pilot episode to basically see how it goes. So if it does good numbers, we'll continue to post them. And if it doesn't do very well, then I'll scratch it, which is what I do with most of my posts. So it really comes down to if you want to see more of this, share it on your social media, tell your friends, leave a like, leave a comment, message me on Instagram. I answer every single DM. Pride myself on that. So this is going to be a test run, and if it does good, we got quite a few guests lined up. Majority of the coaches have in the league have expressed interest in wanting to do some sort of not podcast, but like mini interview, maybe like 5 to 10 minutes on Zoom that we would post on probably YouTube and of course Instagram because that's where most of my followers are. Also, professional athletes in the CFL as well, and obviously some big time CJFL recruits. So we could talk about all sorts of things. So if that interests you, make sure you support it, and if it doesn't, then don't. Then we won't do it. So this is going to be a pilot episode. So basically, I'm just going to talk about some of the areas I see the league can improve. These are just my suggestions based on who I've talked to numerous coaches, former players, current players on how we can improve the league. I'm not going to be critical of anyone involved because I want this to be constructive because a lot of people and I've heard in the league think I'm basically trying to undermine them. That's not the case at all. If they were to implement some of these things that I said, I personally would stop posting. I just continue to post because I feel like it's a great league, the CJFL, and there's really a lot of room for improvement. So those of you that don't know me, I'm called the Wizard. Got Wizard Takes on Instagram. We primarily post CJFL content, but I've been delving into some other leagues that I believe deserve more interest. Perhaps we'll talk more youth sports. I mean, it depends. I always go where the market wants, so I see what my followers want. If they want more of it, I do it, and if it doesn't do good, then I scratch it. So it really comes down to what everyone wants. So we're going to be talking about how I think the league can improve, but first, I guess I'm just going to give myself a mini introduction. I usually like to separate my personal life from Wizard, but I'll give everyone a very, very brief intro about myself and why they should listen to me. So, first of all, I've gathered a decent pull in the Canadian Junior Football League. I have about 33, almost 3,400 followers at the time of recording, which isn't a lot by any means. Like I'm not acting like it's a lot, but considering the niche it's in and the market and the size of the CJFL as a whole, I think it's pretty good. As I think everyone in the league is aware of it, and as well as my engagement on the posts are fantastic. It does much better than other pages that cover similar content. I think for the amount of followers I have, we have unreal engagement. I have the most liked post in Canadian junior football history. I feel like it actually might be able to compete with youth sports. So we do decent numbers. I also report a lot of the news, talk to many people in the league. So these aren't my ideas. These are basically a combination of a lot of important people that know the league through and through. So a little background on myself. I'm got one semester left before I graduate from university with a BCom. So I understand business. I use a lot of the practices I've learned in school and in my personal studies to apply it to what I'm trying to do with the CJFL. So I'm not just some guy on a social media account rambling on about stuff. I actually understand. I understand social media and marketing and how we could grow the league. So I basically just want to leverage my skills, and I really want to. All I want to do is make the league better. So if that's me getting involved, and that's me getting involved. If it's me taking a back seat, I'll gladly take a back seat. Okay, so the first topic I'm going to talk about today, and I'm going to try to keep this pretty brief because I know people don't want to listen to me with my horrible internal computer mic ramble on. So the first topic we're going to talk about is the media and social media, something that I think I've revolutionized in CJFL. But of course, I feel like ever since I came around, they've stepped up their game because instead of viewing me as an ally, they view me as a threat. So I hope you could clear it up. I'm an ally, not a threat. If the CJFL picks up their media department, I'll gladly step aside. So first of all, I feel like the Instagram page needs to be better because a lot of their stuff was just blatantly they saw what I did and they decided to copy it when they easily could have just shared it. And there's numerous examples of that. I'm not going to go over it, but essentially, I feel like they need more innovative posts, and they do have good stuff. But the reality is they just stop posting it. They'll do it like once, then they just won't do it again. So then me being opportunistic, I'll see it and I'll pounce on it, and I'll basically just use what they did and put it out at an accelerated pace. An example of that is the stat leaders from the past 10 years in a single season. They beat me to the punch on with that when they did rushing, but then they just stopped. They just didn't do it for other stats. And then I saw an opportunity and I continued to push it out. And so I feel like maybe if they had a little more, like, I'm not sure who the social media admin is, and I know my graphics aren't great, but I feel like they're semi comparable to them. And considering it's a paid position, I feel like it should be better as I haven't taken a dime from anyone. All I've done was invest my own time. People have offered me money before, players, coaches, outsiders. I've declined it every time because I'm not doing it for money. I'm doing it to improve the league. And in fact, if the CJFL, BCFC, OFC offered me any position, I would gladly, most likely do it for free, depending on the extent of the work, because I just feel like I could improve it. So the first problem is the interviews. They're just pretty generic interviews where not much is getting accomplished, where it's kind of just asking generic questions like what your favorite hamburger is and if you're superstitious. I mean, I don't know about the people listening, but I don't even know that about my good friends. I feel like it's just not something that needs to be accomplished. And I mean, they do talk about some good stuff like their football background, but I feel like it could be improved and we could sell the league better. And that brings me into the next point. I feel like the league just isn't being marketed right because even Chris Jones, former Rough Rider head coach, Edmonton Elks head coach, pretty polarizing figure, was very complimentary of the CJFL, saying how they could use a league like that in the US and there isn't. And I guess it's comparable to what LeVar Ball is doing with the JBA a couple of years ago, where you have these players that don't necessarily want to go to school, but maybe they want to do trades, they just want to work, or they just want to play the sport, and potentially advance to the professional ranks. That's what the CJFL gives you in comparison to U Sports. There's nothing like that in the States. So if you just want to be a trades guy, you don't have to go to school. You could play high quality ball, and in fact, you could even go, if you're really good, you could go to CFL camps, get CFL experience, even if you never plan on playing in the CFL. You could still get that good experience, play on practice rosters where you get paid, and I think it's a really great opportunity because some people just don't want to go to school. They want to do trades, they want to work, or they just want to play football, and this gives them the opportunity. So people's argument for U Sports is scholarships, and I know they've been getting better, offering scholarships and paid schooling to majority of their players, but people need to realize that the CJFL does that as well. It's dependent on some of the teams, but some players get a pretty good amount of money in scholarships for their schooling. So it's not like it's exclusive to U Sports. So if you're a young player and maybe you're a top recruit and you don't see yourself playing right away, you can still go to the CJFL, get film, get scholarships, have a good time in the league. And maybe if you're not working without the stress of school, and then you could eventually graduate to U Sports or keep up with the CJFL and potentially play in CFL training camps, CFL practice rosters. So I feel like that's a great opportunity that the league doesn't market, as we've just had two players signed directly from the CJFL to CFL teams. Leon Noah of the Okanagan Sun and Stephen Smith of the Regina Thunder. And ironically, CFL scouts were at that semifinal game in Regina, looking at Noah, looking at Smith. So scouts in the CFL are starting to take notice of it, of this league. So it could be, I guess it could be like a fast track to get to the CFL. You could basically get into CFL training camp like a year after, I believe. Like, they'll have to take note of you. Of course, you have to play good, but a year after, like, first year. So realistically, it could be like 18, 19, 20, already in a CFL camp, getting that pro experience. So I feel like it's a great opportunity for a lot of people that more people should consider. So that'll bring me into the next topic, which is streaming the games, which relates, I guess, to the media and marketing. Numerous people have complained to me about the streaming in the CJFL, so I don't know much about it. A lot of people think I could fix it, but I can't. I obviously have these ideas on how we could fix it, but I don't know the logistical element, like the cost and the production, so I'm not going to comment on it, but I'll basically just say that needs to be improved. Like, even the Canadian Bowl was kept lagging and crashing at some points. People missed touchdowns. I know I was taking clips from the game. I couldn't get one of the touchdowns because it lagged out during that. So a more reliable stream, especially when people are paying for the stream, which is a model I disagree with, but I obviously don't know the CJFL's financials. But I feel like that's something that if I had more information, I could comment on, because maybe if it's not pay-per-view, could perhaps get a TV deal. I mean, U Sports has it for free on CBC Sports. Who says they can't do that for the CJFL or even some of the other, like Sportsnet, TSN? They broadcast just sports that just people, I don't even know that people watch. Or they're continue with their reruns. Where the CJFL gets big, you could see the future stars of the league before they get into the CFL. So I feel like that could be improved, but again, I don't know all the logistical elements. So that brings me into the next topic, which is about the interconference and all-star game that I've talked about on my page. I feel like I brought up pretty good points, and really the only rebuttal of that was the budget. And again, I don't know the CJFL's financial statements, where they have money and where they don't, but I've heard of areas where I feel like we could reallocate the budget to stuff like this, which I feel like a lot of the players would appreciate, would help gain more of a fan base, like a national fan base for the CJFL, and would just be something fun to do. Like, I know they used to do interconference games. I'd like to say, someone could correct me, in 2017 or 18, but a lot of them were like really costly, obviously, because you're flying across the country. So I feel like that could be improved, though. If, it might be hard for Ontario just because they're so much further, and it doesn't necessarily have to be every team. It could be a team like Okanagan playing Calgary, as they have, like, that's a short bus ride, shorter than Calgary to Winnipeg would be, or Kelowna to Prince George would be, right? Or Prince George against one of the Edmonton teams. I think Edmonton's closer than any BC team is for Prince George. So you could do that as like a pilot, see how it goes, and maybe can continue to build on that. But it needs to be strategic matchups. It can't just be random matchups. You want to pin evenly matched teams against each other, and neutral site could be an option. I'm not particularly in favor of that, but to help reduce travel costs. But it can't just be random teams. It has to be a smart strategic matchup. And I know the Saints, St. Clair, they have a lot of money, and they've expressed interest in wanting to play in the Prairie Football Conference. Obviously, with the state of the league now, that won't be possible, but imagine the atmosphere for one of those games if St. Clair was consistently playing top contenders like Saskatoon, Regina, Okanagan, Langley. Obviously, it's a pipe dream because we're not in the States, but it would be electric. So trying to maybe get one of those games a year for teams like that, I think would definitely help grow the CJFL. I mean, that's what that's basically what the semifinal is for now. But I feel like ever since St. Clair won, there's more hype around that. So I feel like it would be a good investment and just see basically just see how it goes with teams that are close together. And then the All-Star game, I feel like that could be done relatively cheap. You could either, I mean, if you really want, you could charge players, and it could just be you pick players and they could go at their own cost, or you could have a bus at a neutral location. This would probably have to be BC versus the Prairies just because of the budget in Ontario, but if budget works, you could totally draft a team, even do a 3-team tournament for Ontario. But I'm just thinking budget wise, you could play it at like a neutral site, either in like Kamloops, Okanagan, Calgary, Edmonton. And you could bus, say the game's in like Edmonton, the BC players could meet in Okanagan or somewhere, and the Prairie players could meet in like Regina, Saskatoon, and then bus from there. Or however, I'm sure it would be possible again, all things considered, but I feel like players would be quite interested in that, even if it is at a slight cost to them, because it just gives them a ton of film against, really high, in a really high caliber game where those all-star teams would beat, like, let's be honest here, beat some U Sport teams. The Prairie Football Conference All-Star team could definitely compete with some U Sport teams. So it'd be at a very high level. So it would give them an opportunity to really make a name for themselves for higher levels. So then that brings me into the next one, which is the state of the Ontario Football Conference and how it's dominated by St. Clair. I don't know if there's really much they could do about it because London has a great program, but St. Clair, ever since partnering with the college, has just lapped everyone. So I wonder if some of those other Ontario teams may have to partner with colleges, because partnering with colleges just would not work in the Prairie Football Conference. Perhaps in BC, and I know that's kind of the talk for some expansion teams in the Prairies, partnering with in some smaller markets, partnering with the college. But Ottawa is doing an amazing job with their recruiting class, and I know they compete against St. Clair really well, so it'll be interesting to see how it goes this year. But having a competitive Ontario conference where it's not just dominated by St. Clair, I think even the Saints coaches would be supportive of that, because it would help grow the league and give more respect to Ontario, as they do deserve more respect, especially with what St. Clair is doing. They have an incredible program. They might have the best program in all the CJFL. They're not stopping. They're only continuing to get better. So it'll be interesting on how the league approaches that and how they could improve the Ontario conference. So I'm doing everything I can to not only grow my fan base in Ontario, but also just get more people in Ontario interested in the CJFL, which is why more players should join the CJFL, which is our next topic. I touched on why players should join the CJFL already, but basically I feel like if we were to implement a lot of these practices and ideas, and obviously need more information, basically my podcast is just throwing stuff out there and hoping to create a discussion. I'm not taking too hard of a stance on anything. I basically just want a seat at the table to be able to present what I found and what players and coaches in the league want, and to help improve the league that I think has been kind of stale for a little bit. And I think WizardTakes has brought back excitement into the league. And I know a lot of American and international and even national players have told me part of the reason why they joined the league was because of my page, and that they found out about the CJFL through my page. So that's something I'm really proud of, that I'm able to help promote the league and that players want to join this great league. So the final point I'm going to talk about, and we're 20 minutes in, which is pretty much perfect as to where I want to be because I don't want to spend too much time, waste too much of your time on a low quality episode, is the release forms. So I'm just going to touch on this briefly. I think this needs to be reformed because it's pretty bad that players are essentially forced to stay at their teams and there's no appeal process, where even officials in the league have said it's out of date. So I hope that they've discussed it and will reform it, because it is pretty ridiculous that it's at the discretion of the coaches. And like I said in a long form post, obviously players shouldn't just have to pack up and leave, get to pack up and leave with no consequences, especially if the team's investing heavy financial resources into that player. Maybe they have to pay it back, pay the team for a release. Maybe it's just an open transfer portal where you could transfer once, then after that you need financial considerations. But something has to be done where a lot of coaches are basically just holding players at 18, 19, 20 years old, where frankly a lot of them just don't know better and don't consider all the circumstances. So something has to be done. I know a lot of fantastic coaches, a lot of the best coaches in the league will grant any player that wants to release a release. And I 100% support that, because if a player doesn't want to be there, why would you force them to be there? They should want to be there and want to play for your team. And maybe I understand why coaches don't either, because maybe they invested into this player, and for them to just pack up and leave, right, would be kind of a blow to the organization. So there needs to be a middle ground for this. And I know there is the go home release, but sometimes there is just circumstances where going home isn't the issue, and there's other issues of the organization, and the player wants to continue to play football, just not for that organization, and that's 100% their right. So I hope the league explores it and reforms this rule. So that's basically all I got for the first episode. As I said, if my followers want more of this, send me a message on Instagram. I answer every single DM. Leave a comment on this. I'm not sure where I'm going to post it. I still got to figure that out, if I'm going to post it on Spotify and Apple or just YouTube, because I'm new at this, as you can tell with the pretty poor quality mic. And if you want more of it, then make sure to support it and we'll do more. I bet you I could bring almost every single head coach, even some assistant coaches on, where they could talk about the program, sell their program to the younger players, or maybe even transfer some youth sports guys, as I think my page has a decent amount of visibility. We can bring on some current players, to talk about their stories, some former CJFL players that made it pretty far, to talk about their story on how you could potentially follow in their footsteps. So there's all sorts of things that I could do, but of course that really comes down to if that's what you want, the listeners of this show, if you want it. So I'll be able to tell based on how it does. So I hope everyone supports it. I think we can make a real mark on the league with this show, but I'm also not going to invest considerable amount of time into something that isn't being as successful as I want it to be. So just let me know. Thanks for taking 25 minutes out of your day listening to me talk about the league. And hopefully we as a group, the fans, the followers, the players, the coaches, we could all do our part and help improve this great league.